In this video, we're going to talk a little bit about, this is a video entitled TikTok on people in the UK who are needing 2 to 3 jobs and they're just to make ends meet. And so in the beginning, we're going to listen to a nurse and we're going to talk a little bit about what she says.
I love my job. I can't give it up, not yet. It is stressful. I'd managed to make ends meet by doing the extra hours. I don't get enough time to myself. I consistently live in a dump because I just don't have the energy and the time when I get home from work to...
So if you notice, you can see the LGBTQ earrings that she was wearing.
Be doing stuff like tidying up, doing the washing up.
And it says the nurses got a €1,400 increase, on average a 4% increase from the previous. This is in July, and of course this video is actually new from today. It says one union says this means the value of nurses' salaries has dropped by 10% since 2012. And it's not what they're referring to is what they could buy with the currency, right? And so the currency gets devalued. And so what you're able to purchase with that currency gets limited, right? So your salary was X, they print more money. Now it takes more of that currency to buy more. And we're gonna take a look at what the UK welfare state is. And it's pretty ridiculous, and then you'll understand why.
I have woken up in the middle of the night thinking about patients, thinking about bills, thinking about things that need doing. I'm exhausted, but then I wake up in the middle of the night and then I can't go back to sleep again. Please don't eat me. I've at times had to think about rehoming this one. She is my best friend. And
of course, single woman with cats, right? Your typical meme, right? So you have a lot of these women that they're too expensive for the men to take care of. They can't afford to make them housewives because of the inflation. And so these women get pushed into the labor market. And as you can see, I'm not sure what it is in the UK, but here in the United States, nurses work 3 days a week. They do 13 shifts out of the month, meaning that 17 days out of the month, you're not working.
Sometimes she's the only thing that gets...
And you see many nurses in the US feel exactly like this woman. And it's typically because women are not able to handle the stress of work environment. And so when there is this level of stress, they feel this way. They become overwhelmed. And it's because their shoulders were never meant to bear the brunt of being single and having to take care of themselves and manage a household, etc. When the Bible had said that here God said, I am going to create a helper for you. He did not create he did not create a person who was their equal. It was Adam's responsibility, and has been this way since the dawn of time, where men have shouldered the responsibility for taking care of women. But in the welfare state, in the states where you have this overwhelming bubble, the women are forced to go into hard labor. And of course, not able to manage the stress.
Gets me up in the morning, and I've had to think about rehoming her because I'm worried that I can't feed her anymore. If this continues, I will take some kind of industrial action. I would prefer...
So industrial action is striking.
...not to be standing on a picket line, but I'd prefer it not to be needed. I prefer the government just listen to us.
Now it says here, Katie says her patients are more important than her pay, and the decision to strike is a tough one. And again, like I said, the LGBTQ earrings and the cat typically tell you everything that you need to know. And then, of course, looks like a young woman. She looks like she maybe most is in her 30s. Realistically, she probably looks like she's in her 20s, maybe like upper 20s, and she's obese. You can see it on her body.
It's morally impossible.
So she's definitely not going hungry.
I battle with the idea. We will stand up for patients until the cows go home. We will stand there and we will put our necks on the line, but we're so bad at looking after ourselves. They stood out on the streets through COVID, clapping, banging pans, calling us heroes. But now that we dare
I'm sure you remember all those TikTok videos that were going on.
ask for what we deserve, we are going to be seen as pariahs. We're going to be seen as, demanding and putting our paychecks before our patients and things like that.
Exactly, because at the end of the day, when the nurses demand more money, who is going to pay for that? It's you, the taxpayer. And so they hold the patients hostage until the government says, we will pay you more money, whether it's money printing, raising the cost, etc. And she understands that the result of them going on strike is that the patients are going to be like, well, you're just want more money at the end of the day, of course, and it's just because she can't afford to live.
Like that, and it's not the case. My dad far left. 12 years. I love my job. I worked so hard for it, and I made my dad so proud by getting it. I don't want to give this up. I can't give it up, not yet. That's why I'm fighting now.
The truth is this isn't just a cost of living crisis. There's no doubt that it is a crisis for the working class and for millions of people struggling to make ends meet across the country. But it's not a crisis for big businesses and the super rich, because for them, it's record profits, it's a record number of billionaires, and record wealth for the top 1%.
And this is what I had said in my video previously. When the government prints money during the pandemic, the people that own the assets that are approved by the government, and the government is the one who allows them to open these businesses, and the government controls it, right? If you remember, during the pandemic, the small mom and pops had to close, but the big corporations were allowed to stay open. Now, of course, people look at it from the standpoint of, it's the corporations. The corporations are in control of the government, and that is not the case. It is the government that is in control of the corporations, and the government says to the corporations, we allow you to stay open. We allow, and we will tell you when to close. And when businesses don't do what the government says, well, then the government will take them to court. They'll just look at Elon Musk, right? There's a perfect example where as soon as Elon Musk bought Twitter, started exposing what was going on, then the government starts talking about, we need to look into Twitter, etc., threats to our democracy and all this stuff. And this is what you get. This happened to Bill Gates a very long time ago. This happened to Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci, in the beginning of the pandemic, was on TV. I think he was on Channel 1 News, and he had said, someone had asked him about all these patients that were supposedly asymptomatic but spreading during the pandemic. And Dr. Fauci got on the mic and said, in all of history of respiratory illnesses and in all of his history as a doctor, he said there has never been a pandemic that has spread by asymptomatic. It has always been a symptomatic person that is then spreading the disease. And then later on, he backtracked and then denied all of that. Well, who was it that told him to backtrack? Did he do it on his own volition? No, he did it because the government needed him to retract his statement and to start telling this narrative of asymptomatic carriers. It's just, these are the people that they put in front of you so that you can blame them, or you can blame Joe Biden, you can blame Donald Trump, you can blame Dr. Fauci, you can blame who you want, and blame the big corporations, right? We're going to make them pay their fair share. But it's actually the government that is making them do all these things.
It's a cost of living crisis for the many, but a bonanza for the few. An investigation from Unite the Union found that the profit margins for FTSE 350 companies rocketed by 73% between 2019 and 2021, and were up.
Of course it did, because they were printing all this money. They own all of the assets. And so while you were staying home and spending all that money, right, there was no complaints about spending all that money. But then when the inflation came and then they started to see all the record profits, well, this is what you get. And this is what I talk about, that in socialism, the wealth rises to the top because the people who own the assets end up collecting all of the currency that the government prints, because they make it too hard for you to be able to go into business for yourself. Like I say, you don't own your labor, they own your labor. And so they can devalue your labor by creating currency. But the net end result is that these companies that own the assets, they end up with record profits. But then the following years, they have to raise prices as inflation has now crept into the economy. And so even though they may have record profits for a short period of time, once that money starts to circulate in the economy, then what happens, right? People go on strike. The cost of everything starts to go up, and then they start losing money. And this is what's happening to companies like Tyson. This is what happened to Tyson, where in the beginning, Tyson was making so much money. The stock was $100. It's $43 now.
Up an even more staggering 89% in the first half of 2022. From the well-known obscenely high windfall profits of oil and gas giants BP and Shell, to the supermarket chains Tesco, Sainsbury's and Asda, who saw a 97% increase in profits between 2019 and 2021.
And again, they're talking about oil and gas. If you remember, one of the first things that Joe Biden did was he cut the Keystone Pipeline. He cut the Keystone Pipeline, refused to allow other companies to start producing oil and gas. And so what did he do? He limited supply. And so naturally, what's going to happen to the price, right? And how did he sell it? We're gonna make those companies. We're gonna save the environment. There was like one instance of him like whispering to a little girl, "I promise you, we're gonna make them pay," right? And all the people were there, and they were like, "Yay, we're gonna save the planet!" All these idiots, right? The useful idiots of socialism is what, what's his name? Stalin, I believe, referred to them as the useful idiots of socialism. And it's because these are the people that champion it, right? These are the people that voted for Joe Biden, right? Overwhelmingly, the people who voted for Joe Biden were women, single mothers, and single women. Overwhelmingly, those were the biggest voters for Joe Biden. Of course, they voted for this. How did they do it? Under the guidelines of, we're gonna pay back your tuition, right? And women hold 2/3 of all student debt, and that's how Joe Biden got into office.
Big businesses
under the guise of socialism, right? We're gonna take that bill away from you, and we're gonna give it to everybody else, throw it on the backs of the taxpayer, and that's what they voted for. They voted for more socialism.
Have seen their profits soar, but this is just one side of the coin. The other side is the soaring prices for our constituents. Energy bills through the roof, roughly doubling in 12 months. Food prices up nearly 20%. And rent inflation at eye-watering record levels, and mortgage payments continuing to rise. So it's no wonder that living standards have been set to take the biggest fall since the 1950s.
Ooh, so you're talking almost 80 years. And so we're not going to play this whole video, but we're just going to leave it there. And at the end of the day, we're going to look at the welfare state, right? The welfare state in the UK. It says, how much does the UK pay? How much of the UK is on welfare, right? How many people in the UK are on welfare? The welfare state is a big part of Britain's family, right? And this article, think about it, this is from 2013. So the numbers, I can tell you, are much worse. And it says here, 20 million families receive some kind of benefit. 64% of all families in the UK are on welfare. About 8.7 million of them are pensioners, right? Those are people who are on Social Security. And it says for 9.6 million families, benefits make up more than half of their income. 30% of families receive 50% of their income from the government. Around 5.3 million of them are pensioners. And so this is why the cost of living is so high. Because at some point, you just get an overwhelming number of people that just don't participate in the labor market. And so you have less people producing goods and services, and that's all that economy is. And so you have an overwhelming number, almost 60, and this is from 2013. This is from 2013. I can guarantee you that the number has increased. It's probably almost 70% of the country, probably at this point, receive a good percentage. And in America, it's the same way. In America, it's the same way. 30% of all of the income that Americans get, in terms of their quote-unquote earnings, comes from the federal government. And that's why the record shows that over 63% of all Americans, in essence, don't pay taxes because they get more from the government than they put in terms of the spending that goes on. And so this is why the people in the UK, the younger generation, they're falling into poverty. And again, I've said this many times, as Ronald Reagan had warned, that your children and your grandchildren are going to be the ones that suffer. And we're living during that time period. There is no escaping this. What lies ahead for young generations like millennials, Gen Zers, Gen Alpha is abstract poverty like you've never seen. And this is why this war is so important to the United States. They're willing to sacrifice Ukraine. We'll throw Israel into the mix as well, because the result will be abstract poverty. And of course, the people who will be hurt the most will be Europe and the UK, because America sits at the top as the top portion of that communistic government that rules over the Americas and parts of Europe. And so even if those countries fall into poverty, America will still tax them. Just look what America did to Germany, right? Well, again, I said this before, when America destroyed the pipeline where they were getting cheap gas from Russia, they sold energy in the terms of liquid natural gas to Germany, who is their ally, for 5 times the rate, 5 times the going market rate. Think about that. It is what it is, and this is what you get with communism. This is what you get when the people vote for socialism. You inflate the government becomes too powerful to fight, and the only thing that's remaining for the people is poverty and debt slavery. It is what it is, and this is what the people have voted for. Anyway, leave your comment below as always. If this is your first time here, feel free to subscribe, and I will check you next time. Have a good night. Well, this video was done at night for me. Take care.